I'm going to show you some tips and tricks for the Hello Spring circle door hanger. I pre-painted some of the pieces just to keep this video a little bit shorter. So the first thing I did was I painted a thin coat on the backer with a foam brush, let that dry, gave it a very light sanding just to smooth it down, and then I painted a second coat. And I'm going to set that aside. Then the yellow, I painted the P and the bird's beak, and then I set those aside. And then I painted these pieces blue. So the bird and the wing, I am not completely finished because we're going to shade it with a little bit of black. So I'm going to set that aside for now. I'm going to show you the next step. If you're following along with the written instructions, we are on the step for white. If your kits came in a box, so basically if you had multiple kits, or if you had them shipped, then you can just tear pieces of your box off to use to dab your paint. If not, this is, go show your dad. Sorry, my dog just came up to me. He has something in his mouth. He's so bad. Oh, Cubby, no, bad boy, no. This is just a piece of an Amazon box, so really you can use any kind of cardboard. So you're gonna take your wedge and you're going to dip it in white, and you don't want very much because the only time you're using the wedge with the white is to shade these pieces. So you actually don't want very much on that wedge at all. So I'm gonna dab off to the side several times, and then I'm gonna start with the P, and I'm just going to very, very lightly dab the top part of that and the bottom, just to give it a little bit of, I don't know what you would call it, depth, shading, whatever. And now I'm not gonna re-dab because I wanna see how much paint is left, and I'm just going to very lightly dab on the R. And as you can see, there was not very much at all, so I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit more paint. With white, when you're doing white or black, it is such a high contrast color. Less is more to begin with because you don't want to have to go back and repaint, which you can totally do, so don't be too afraid. That is all I'm going to do for the R. And then the same for hello. I'm gonna go over the top and the bottom to shade that. So I'm gonna focus on the edges at first. And then I'm going to gently carry that down a little ways. I'm dabbing so lightly because I don't want too much to show. And then I'm going to also do the E and the O, just a little bit. And the bottom. And as I'm noticing I'm losing paint, I can dab a little bit harder. Just go with how your wedge is feeling. Add a little bit more here and just bring it down just a little ways. And if you feel like the line is too harsh, you can always go back and dip some in your blue and bring it back up just to soften the line a little bit. Okay, so that is the hello. So those three pieces are completely done. So I'm gonna set those aside. The next step is this mint color. And the four pieces that you're going to do, that is the grass, the G, and both tulip stems. So I've already given 2 coats, so you don't have to sit here and watch, to these 3 pieces. And I'm gonna do the last coat on here just in case you had questions on that. My piece feels pretty smooth after the first coat. Sometimes when you paint wood, the grain will raise and it will feel really rough and kind of give it a not great finish. So if that happens, you don't want to use your sandpaper, like press down really hard and sand all the paint off. All you want to do is very lightly just go over it one time, and that should be enough to knock all of that wood grain down. You may or may not need to do that. And then for my second coat, you're going to dab in your paint, dab that excess off, and then dab up and down to paint it. Once I get close to this border, I just kind of pinch my wedge so that I'm just working with the edges of it. That just helps. And then I just go slow, and that helps to keep it clean. Okay, now I'm gonna set this one aside since that one is still wet, and you're gonna take your, I called it dark sage because I wasn't quite sure what to call it because it's a dark green, blue, gray color. You're gonna take the same wedge that you were using with your mint, and you're just gonna take an edge of that same wedge and dip it into that dark sage color so it looks like this. Then you're going to rainbow it out several times until you see a nice blended color like this. And I'm going to start with, let's start with the G. And I'm going to start up on the edge and very, very lightly dab. And same technique, rainbow your way down. And that should create, going back and forth, it should create a nice blended from dark to light. It should look pretty seamless. And I'm gonna do that on the bottom part as well. So that is what we are left with. As long as you're just going back and forth, it should be fairly easy. Now I'm gonna do the same thing, load up with that dark sage color and rainbow back and forth until it's blended. And then we're going to go around the borders of the grass. Since it's a bigger piece, I'm gonna need more. If you see any spots where it looks pretty sparse, you can always add more. And then I'm just going to, on the bottom part, I want it more of like an outline. So I'm just going to dab on the very edges of that. Load up on that light color because I accidentally got it out. So there's my grass, and then so these tulip stems are a little bit smaller, so it's more of an outline versus blending as much, just because it's such a small area. So I'm just gonna focus on the outer edges. I'm still gonna do that rainbow motion. So that it looks blended, but it's not going to be, like I'm not gonna be able to get up on the stem, so it's just basically from the bottom up. And then let's reload. I'm gonna go ahead, because this is getting a little bit dry, I'm gonna do the dark sage on this half, and then some of that lighter color on the bottom half, and then let's rainbow back and forth. A lot of rainbowing. And then we're just going to focus around the edges. since this one's bigger, I can go up, kind of shade up the stem as well. And I want to bring, and this is all personal preference, how you want it to look. I want my stem to be a little bit, or the leaf to be a little bit darker. Okay, I am going to I don't like as much contrast as I was doing here, so I'm just going back over that with the mint, and I'm going to call that good. Okay, so that is what mine is going to end up as. Now, I'm going to set these tulips into the medium pink pile, and I am going to paint the lightest pink. So you have this light color that's barely pink, there's a medium pink, and then there's this super bright one. Go with your lightest one first. I'm just gonna paint one butterfly, then I'll push pause so you don't watch me paint all of my things. So your butterfly body, you can go ahead and paint the whole thing pink if you would like. If you want it black like my picture, I colored mine with a marker just because I didn't want to have to go in with a little tiny paintbrush to get all these little detail parts. You can do that. If you don't have a black marker, you can either use a Sharpie, you can use a Crayola marker. I mean, I even just have a dry erase marker here. So whatever black marker you would like. Fine tip is much easier though. But because I'm painting mine or coloring mine with a marker, I don't want to paint over it. So I'm just going to go a little bit slower around the body and just kind of use the corners and very edges of my wedge. And if I get a little bit of paint in there, I'm not gonna worry too much about it. The marker just won't stick over paint as well, so you'll kind of see that through. But if you're splattering like I am at the end, it will cover it, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, I'm gonna do both these pieces and then come back and show you how to shade those. Okay, I did 2 coats on my end and I only did 1 coat on my butterfly wings because we're actually going to be shading the butterfly wings, so I'm not as worried about that. So let's start with, you're gonna use 2 different colors actually, shading with the same wedge. I think I might be out of this color. Oh, there we go. We barely need any. So I am going to, same technique, I'm going to put the very edge with that bright pink, and I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to start rainbowing out. And so it will look like that. And then I'm just going to rainbow my way down the top and the bottom of that N. See how beautiful that is? I'm gonna do it on the bottom too. Or, well, I don't know. This is either the top or the bottom, I don't know. Okay, so that's how the N ends. Then I'm going to clean this wedge off by dipping it back into that light pink, just so that you don't see any of that dark pink over, because you barely used any. And I'm just going to dab. It's okay if a little bit remains. And then the butterfly wings, I'm going to shade those blue. So go back to your blue paint. And I'm going to use the same side as that fuchsia. And I'm gonna dip a little bit more because I'm gonna do more than just the very edges of those wings, and rainbow that out. And then just stay on the edges. And then work your way down. Try to keep your touch light so that it doesn't show any harsh wedge marks. Are you looking for the meatballs? They're in the outside fridge. Towards the bottom. And then let's do the same thing with this second butterfly. Like if you're staring at the freezer, they're in the bottom right. I think they're in like a green bag or something. Maybe blue, I don't know. My daughter's cooking dinner for us and can't find, just making meatball subs and she can't find the meatballs. Did she just need to open her eyes? Okay, so there's one wing. Let's go with the other. Okay, so there's our two butterflies. Now, what is our next color? The medium pink. I'm gonna go grab a wedge for these and I'll be back. Okay, I painted these that blush color, so you don't have to watch me do that. And as soon as you're done painting, dip into that fuchsia color. And let's rainbow back and forth. Nothing new there. And let's start with the S. Okay, so that blending looks really good, but I think I want it a little bit more of a contrast, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that a second time. It's better to build it up than start right off really strong. There we go. I like that. Okay, so there's the S. And then we'll go around the sides and the top for that tulip. And it went a little bit onto the side, so I'm just putting some of that blush color on the end, and I'm just gonna go through and fix that up so it looks a little cleaner. Okay, so I'm happy with, once it dries, it's gonna look really good. It'll look blended. And then let's do this large tulip. Okay, so I'm going to start, actually I'm gonna start on the top because I'm gonna blend that down pretty far. So I want the tips of it to be the darkest part of it, and then I'm gonna go around the edge, and I'm going to do both edges first, and then use the very, very edge of my wedge to kind of, and I'm gonna pinch it with my fingers to kind of outline by that stem. I'm gonna go pretty slow. And then I'm going to very, very lightly go along the line. I didn't do this with the smaller tulip because it would cover the whole thing, but it's easier with the bigger one. Okay, so I'm gonna call that good as well. And now the black, I'm looking, is it only the bird? Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna take a small wedge and dip into the black paint. Black is super harsh, so you're gonna wanna be really, really careful. So I'm just going to dab till almost all of that paint, I'm dabbing pretty hard, is off. I want very, very little paint. And I'm gonna start with the tail feathers. And I'm gonna start fanning out. And then I'm just going to do his little hair fluff and a little bit on the top of his head. And then his belly. And then I'm gonna do the bottom of the wing. And that is good for that. Then you can take, if you don't have a dotting tool, take the end of your mini paintbrush and dip it into, like the back end of your mini paintbrush, dip it into that black paint and just dot that eye. Okay, and then for the butterfly, you can either use your mini paintbrush to paint them. Try to get a fine tip marker. It makes it so much easier. I just don't know where I set mine down. So I have this super thick marker that I'm just gonna have to be careful with. This is just, it's just a lot easier than trying to get all the fine details with a little mini paintbrush. Oh, my antenna broke off. Okay, I'm going to let everything dry completely, and then, oh, you know what I forgot to show you? I forgot to show you how to polka dot your backer. To polka dot your background, you're gonna take the end of your, oh, here's a mini paintbrush. So you would use the end, the back end of this, or your dotting tool, and you're gonna get that blush color. So how I make my polka dots look like they're random but also even is you obviously will have yours in your little cup. I'm going to get some paint on the end, and I'm going to start by going in between these two holes. Then I go to the very bottom. I know that this will be covered by grass, but it will help me to stay basically in line. And I'm gonna put that about right there. And I'm gonna try to stay in the middle of these and go somewhat in the middle of the door hanger, which is about there. And then let's dot in between these two and in between these two. And it does not need to be perfect. Then I'm going to go over about this far, dot there, over from this one, so that it's kind of in line, and over from this one. And then repeat on this side. However, keep your hand raised. If you drop your hand, you're going to smear your polka dots. Ideally, I would work from left to right. However, I have a method. Now, basically what I'm going to do is, I guess I could do one here and one on this end too. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is basically go in between now. So technically there should have been a dot over here. Hopefully I'm on the camera. There should have been a dot over here. So in the middle of that, and then the middle of these four, the middle of, oh, that's all right, middle of these four, and these four. And then over here, and over here. I'm kind of fudging because if it should have been in the G, I'm just gonna go over a little bit so that you can see it. If I kept it in the etching, you're not gonna be able to see that polka dot. Let's go here and here. And then we'll go here. And then that would be covered by the tulip. And then we'll do this one onto the edge so that you can see it, and that should be good. Now these take a little bit to dry because it's like a mound of paint. So I'm setting this aside, and when it's completely dry, we will put the finishing touches on everything, and then I'll show you how to splatter. One thing I forgot to show you is if you see my pictured example, I had just done a little tiny pink outline around the edge. It was really subtle, so you can do it if you'd like or not. But I just took that blush color, and I didn't do the very bottom just because the grass is gonna cover it. So I just basically filled the wedge with that color, and then I just set it down and rotated. More. And that's that. Okay, to finish your board, I'm just making sure mine is dry. We are going to start with the grass. So let's peel that adhesive off, and then just follow the etching. You're gonna line the bottom edges with the bottom of your backer, and then make sure, so before I press down, the edges are in line with the bottom, and all of the etching is also covered, and I'm going to just press down until it sticks. Now, you're going to want to do one piece at a time. I pre-peeled all my pieces so you don't have to sit here and watch me peel them, but I do not recommend you doing that because it's so easy to stick them together or drop them and they stick to the floor. So just be aware. Normally, just do one at a time. So then I'm going to do the tulip. Same thing, it's going to butt up against the grass, and it's going to follow along the edge of your backer, and make sure before you stick it down that all of the etching along the top and the sides is covered. And then we'll start with hello. Okay, sorry, I usually put my head all the way down so I can double check before I stick, but then when I do that, you can't see because my head is blocking. Okay, we'll do S. Where's the P? Where's the R? Make sure that the N is the correct way because it can sit 2 different ways. Now, I don't know if you're noticing, but I'm not pressing down yet. I'm setting everything in place just in case I needed to pick things up and move them. So now that I'm happy with where they're sitting, I'm gonna go through and press everything down. Especially if you're hanging this outside. If you're hanging it inside, it's not as critical, but if you're hanging it outside, you wanna make sure every single edge is pressed down. Otherwise, the change in the weather will pop things off. So let's put our butterfly here, and then our other butterfly there. And then I forgot to mention earlier, this piece is just so that your bird has something to sit up. It's just basically a filler. So I'm going to lift that and then decide where you want your bird. I'm gonna just put mine right here. It really doesn't matter where you have him. And I'm gonna set that down. And then he can sit on top of the grass. Otherwise, he's kind of free floating on those blades, and it is a lot more of a chance that he'll pop off. And then we'll do his wing. Now, you can call it good from here, but I'm gonna do even more details. I'm going to go ahead and add some highlights and some dots. This is totally optional, and then I'm also going to splatter. So, how I do my swipes is I use a white paint marker. You can use the mini paintbrush. If you would prefer, you can swipe it with the bristles, you can use the end. The paint marker just makes it a lot easier. So I'm just gonna add a swipe there. I'm gonna go ahead and swipe this tulip. I'm going to go ahead and go down these. And then let's do here, here. You can go wherever you want. You don't have to follow this exactly. And then, I don't have my white paint out. I'll put some here. I'm gonna take my dotting tool again, or you can use the end of your mini paintbrush. And again, remember that you're gonna wanna keep your arm lifted, because this will take a little bit before they dry. And then I'll do let's go down here. And we'll do his wings. And then let's add onto the stems. Okay. And I'm also going to add a few swipes, again, being very careful because it's gonna take a while for these dots to dry. I'm gonna swipe the wings just to add some more. Okay. Now I'm gonna move my camera and we're gonna go and splatter and then we are finished. Okay, the first thing you're gonna wanna do is lay down a disposable tablecloth. If it is warm enough, you can go ahead and do this outside on your grass. It's still winter here. So What I have found, which will make your splatter look so much better, is you can water down your white paint just the tiniest bit. You don't want it complete water. So literally a drop, maybe 2 drops of water, and then I just stir it with the back end of my mini paintbrush. If you're not confident in doing that and you're afraid you're gonna water it too much, go ahead and just dampen the bristles of your brush. And then I dip just the very end of the brush, and I always give it a few flicks off to the side so that the bigger splatters end up on the tablecloth. And then just flick. And I start higher up and then move down as the paint disappears off of your brush, I guess. I don't know what word I'm looking for. If you've done any of my other kits the past few months, you should be a pro at this by now. And as you probably noticed on your own kits, as it dries, it will dry lighter. And you can do as little or as heavy of a coat as you want. And that's it. Once it completely dries, you want to string your twine through and hang it on either the door hanger post if you got one of those, or add it to your wreath, or just put it on your door, and you are finished.